Ever witnessed a high-stakes adrenaline rush where Hollywood's most iconic cars go under the hammer? Well, you're about to. From legendary TV show dream cars to collector's items, the Barrett-Jackson is the auction for top-tier pop culture history. But here's the real question. How much are people willing to pay to own these cinematic legends? Get ready, because today we'll be looking at 10 iconic TV and film cars, with some breaking the bank and others shattering expectations. The last one will blow your mind. Number 10. 1983 DeLorean DMC-12. If there was ever a car that could rival the others in sheer pop culture dominance, it would be the DeLorean DMC-12 from Back to the Future. This was a recreation of the legendary time machine, painstakingly crafted to mirror the silver screen original down to the last flux capacitor wire. For a car that originally flopped in the 80s, the DeLorean found eternal life thanks to Doc Brown and Marty McFly. This 1983 model was sourced directly from the DeLorean Motor Company in Humble, Texas. The buyer wasn't just getting stainless steel gull-wing doors and a 2.85-liter V6, they were getting a fully immersive blast into the past. Every detail had been dialed in. The flux capacitor was installed and ready to channel 1.21 gigawatts of energy. It had plutonium chamber readout on the passenger dashboard with a mess of wires strewn beneath the dash, center console switches, and even the rear pontoon box enclosures. All these were meticulously recreated by Bob's Prop Shop in Dallas, Texas, ensuring that whoever landed this baby would feel like they just stepped out of a Hollywood soundstage. It wasn't just about the visuals either. The machine conversion included extra goodies like a fog machine kit, an inverter, and a rear-view video camera system, just in case you needed to pop an eye out for rogue Biff Tannins lurking behind you. The cherry on top? This DeLorean was autographed by Christopher Lloyd himself, giving his stamp of approval to one of the best recreations ever made. When this beast rolled onto the auction stage at Barrett-Jackson, the winning bid was $132,000. Not bad for a machine that holds a permanent place in the hearts of movie lovers everywhere. Man, imagine rolling up to a car meet in this thing. Instant legend status. But hey, that's just the beginning. We've got even more iconic rides coming up, from ghost-chasing ambulances to crime-fighting muscle cars. So if you love rare movie cars and wild auction prices, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Number 9. 1923 Ford Model T Dragula coffin car recreation. $61,600. That's what it took to drive home one of the most spine-chilling, outrageous, and downright legendary cars in TV history. We're talking about the 1923 Ford Model T Dragula, a machine that looks like Frankenstein himself stitched it together. Now, if you were glued to your black and white TV back in the day, you remember the Munsters, a family of lovable, monstrous oddballs who had a taste for the macabre and a need for speed. When Grandpa Munster had to win back the Munster coach in a drag race, he built the Dragula. This recreation had a Ford Mustang 289cc V8, twin reverse-mounted carburetors, and a set of pipe organ-style exhaust headers that made it look like it was belting out a funeral hymn every time it revved. The original Dragula was built by George Barris and his team at Barris Custom Industries, using a real-deal coffin with a dragster chassis. That's right, a genuine coffin. This recreation was no cheap knockoff either. It was built under the watchful eye of Barris himself by Keith Dean and Jim Johnson. The goal was to make it as close to the original as humanly or inhumanly possible. When it rolled up to Barrett-Jackson, you could feel the excitement in the air. People crowded around, snapping pictures, pointing out the insane details such as the front-end carriage lamps, the butterfly steering wheel, and the tombstone grille. When the bidding started, you could practically hear Grandpa Munster's cackling echo through the auction hall. Number 8. Starsky & Hutch 1976 Ford Gran Torino recreation. Growing up in the era of bell-bottoms and disco, you will know exactly what this car means. The 1976 Ford Gran Torino from Starsky & Hutch was as much a character in the show as Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul. Think about it. Every time you heard that police radio crackle, you knew action was coming. Tire-squealing chases, high-speed pursuits, and handbrake turns so sharp they could cut through a vinyl record. This was a two-door hardtop bathed in bright red with that unmistakable bold white stripe running down the sides. It looked fast even when it was parked. This particular recreation was a collector-grade example, not just some random Torino with a quick paint job. Built to mimic the TV car down to the last detail, it had the proper slotted aluminum wheels, power steering, power brakes, and even a period-correct Motorola police radio mounted under the dash. Under the hood sat a 351 Windsor V8 hooked up to a C4 automatic transmission. It wasn't the fastest car ever built, but it had just the right amount of grunt to light up those rear tires and make any pursuit scene believable. It also came with a little Hollywood flair, with autographs from both Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul scrawled across the trunk and windshield visor. If you wanted authenticity, you couldn't ask for much more. Now, the original Starsky and Hutch car was reportedly built by Ford specifically for the show, but whether this particular example saw any studio action is still up for debate. Still, when it crossed the Barrett-Jackson auction block, people bid. When the bidding war got going, you could almost hear Huggy Bear dropping some slick one-liners in the background. By the time the hammer dropped at $56,100, one lucky fan had secured a rolling time machine straight out of the disco decade. Number 7. Beverly Hillbillies Truck. The 1921 Oldsmobile Model 46, better known as the Beverly Hillbillies, was a head-turner that brought nostalgia with it. It went under the hammer for a cool $121,000. Built and signed by none other than George Barris of Barris Custom Industries, this was one of 5 trucks crafted for the legendary TV series The Beverly Hillbillies. If you grew up watching Jed Clampett, Granny, and the gang take on Beverly Hills, you probably remember this jalopy bouncing down the road, loaded with all their worldly possessions: barrels, Granny's rocking chair, and even a wash tub. It was the perfect example of American television in its golden years. Despite critics giving the show a hard time, audiences couldn't get enough. It dominated ratings, racking up 7 Emmy nominations and eventually inspiring a 1993 film. This rickety old truck remained a constant through it all, clugging along with its makeshift wooden slats and oversized wheels. What makes this auction lot even more special is that it was an official stunt and exhibition vehicle used both in the TV series and in the film. It wasn't just for show, it had been part of the action, making it a true piece. The build itself is fascinating. A 1921 Oldsmobile body mounted on a vintage Ford truck chassis, held together with original wooden sections for authenticity and safety. Fiberglass and metal fabricated details completed the look, right down to the barrels of Granny's rheumatism medicine. Over the years, this truck wasn't just stored away in some warehouse. It made the rounds at high-profile car shows across North America, spending time in places like the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles and the Hollywood Star Cars Museum in Tennessee. Even motorsports commentator Ken Squire got a ride in it as a Grand Marshal appearance. Collector Ron Pratt once had this truck in his impressive collection before it changed hands again in 2015. Number 6. General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard. When we talk about reckless abandon, airborne stunts, and pure American muscle, it's the General Lee. That 1969 Dodge Charger with its bright orange paint, iconic 01 on the doors, and the unmistakable Dixie horn is burned into the minds of anyone who ever watched the Dukes of Hazzard. One of the finest replicas of this Hollywood hero car, a meticulously crafted 1968 Dodge Charger built to match the legendary Georgia No. 3 General Lee, crossed the Barrett-Jackson auction block for a jaw-dropping $247,500. Every inch of this Charger was painstakingly recreated to match the real deal, right down to the font of the numbers on the doors and the navy blue roof with correctly aligned stars. The attention to detail was next level. This car wore the same Corvette orange flame paint used on the original, color matched with a Travis Bell swatch for absolute accuracy. Even the rear deck panel had the correct Georgia Cross flags, and the push bar up front was made from 2.5-inch tubing, just like the one used in the first 3 seasons of the show. Inside, the details kept piling up. A brand new legendary saddle tan interior, factory console, and a period-correct Cobra 77X CB radio made sure this Charger wasn't just a showpiece. It felt like it drove straight out of Hazard County. Even the passenger windshield had the exact same Los Angeles College decal as the General Lee No. 1 car. Under the hood sat a beastly 440 Ci big block V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor, backed by a 3-speed automatic transmission. It had Hemi-style brake boosters, an Edelbrock intake, and the correct chrome dished-in air cleaner that was discontinued in 1980. It had the Dixie horns, because what's a General Lee without that unmistakable blast of Southern charm? This particular car also carried a bit of Hollywood magic behind its meticulous restoration. The trunk bore the signatures of Dukes of Hazzard's cast members, including John Schneider, Tom Wopat, and Catherine Bach. Even stunt driver Eddie Fiola, who launched the General Lee 75 feet in the Dukes movie, left his mark on this piece of TV history. Unlike some General Lees that had their doors welded shut for jumps and stunts, this one remained true to the hero car specs, meaning the doors functioned like they did for Bo and Luke Duke. The bidding war for this car was fierce, and no wonder. It was a near-perfect recreation of one of the most famous cars in television history, restored to the exact specifications of a real-deal hero car. It had the looks, the power, the Hollywood connections, and the kind of pedigree that made bidders reach deep into their pockets. At $247,500, it was a steal for the lucky buyer. Number 5. Herbie from The Love Bug. The Herbie, the 1963 Volkswagen Beetle, stole hearts in Disney's classic The Love Bug. Herbie had more personality than most of the human characters in the movie. One of several used in filming, this particular Beetle went under the gavel at Barrett-Jackson and landed in the Tammy Allen collection. Now, if you've ever seen The Love Bug, you know Herbie wasn't just a regular VW bug. This little guy had a mind of his own, capable of winning races, throwing tantrums, and even squirting oil when the situation called for it. No joke, this very car was the oil squirting car that ruined a cop's day in Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo. When Herbie crossed the block at Barrett-Jackson in West Palm Beach, the room buzzed with excitement. Not every day does a car with as much Hollywood pedigree as this come up for sale. Originally owned by Walt Disney Productions, it came with full documentation, an actual copy of the 1972 title listing Disney as the owner. John Staluppi, a world-renowned car collector, snapped up this piece of movie magic for $28,600. Can you blame him? This is the kind of car that makes grown men nostalgic, and kids fall in love with classic cars. A Beetle with more charisma than half of Hollywood. Who wouldn't want to own that? Interestingly, another Herbie, used in Herbie Goes Bananas, set a record at auction, pulling in $126,500, outperforming what most muscle cars could dream of fetching at auction. Number 4. Ecto-1 from Ghostbusters. The Ecto-1, the 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor ambulance-turned ghost hunting battle wagon, made its presence felt the second it rolled onto the auction floor. This is the car from Ghostbusters, the movie that had every kid in the 80s running around yelling, "Who you gonna call?
Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call?"
Being a fan-built recreation of the legendary Ectomobile, it was spectacularly done. Built from a highly original 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor end-loader combination ambulance hearse, it looked like it drove straight out of the movie and onto the auction stage.
In this case, it's Ghostbuster time. A nice reproduction from the 1959 Cadillac of the Ectomobile.
The crowd was already electric before bidding even started. A Cadillac of this era is already a head-turner, but when you add sirens, flashing lights, and the unmistakable Ghostbusters logo on the doors, it becomes something else entirely. Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Bill Murray, and Ernie Hudson made this car a cultural icon, but this particular Ecto-1 carried something extra special: autographs. The driver's visor and dash featured signatures from none other than Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, and William Atherton. Most collectors' dreams are a piece of Hollywood history with the names of the legends who brought it to life. Built by South End Custom in California and customized further by Ectotech in New Jersey, this Ecto-1 had a rebuilt 390 Ci V8 engine with a hydromatic automatic transmission under the hood. The interior was packed with all the eerie electrical gadgets needed to trap a Class 5 full-roaming Vapor. Barrett-Jackson's Las Vegas 2021 auction saw this beauty sell for $297,000. Number 3. Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo. The 1974 Ford Econoline, recreated to be none other than the iconic Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, is one van that could steal a show. Dr. Berkowitz saw the vision. He got his hands on a clean Ford Ecoline with only 13,427 miles on the odometer and went all in. First stop was Florida, where Walter DeAndrea Bodyworks worked their magic on that groovy two-tone green and blue paint job, complete with the unmistakable orange flowers. Next up, the folks at Cartham Upholstery in New Rochelle, New York transformed the interior into something Shaggy and Scooby themselves would be proud of. Under that psychedelic exterior sat a 302 cubic inch V8 engine, an automatic transmission, power brakes, and an upgraded aluminum radiator to keep things cool. A modern Optima battery meant it cranked up every time, and with climate control and a custom sound system, this van was road trip ready. To top it off, it rolled on 5-spoke custom wheels that screamed 60s and 70s nostalgia. This was the kind of ride that could turn heads at a car show, make grown men grin like kids again, and maybe, just maybe, solve a few mysteries along the way. So, how much did this slice of Saturday morning history go for? A cool $58,300 at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale 2025. A bargain for a machine this groovy. Speaking of legendary vehicles, next, we'll be shifting gears literally to something with a bit more horsepower and a whole lot of Hollywood swagger. Number 2. Pontiac Firebird Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit. The 1977 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit was a Universal Studios promo car, one of the few that survived the movie's high-speed, stunt-packed chaos. Needham knew what he was doing when he picked the Trans Am. He needed a car that could hold its own in wild chases, take a beating, and still look like $1 million. He saw an ad for the soon-to-be-released 1977 model and pulled the trigger. Pontiac provided 4 cars, technically 1976 models with 77 front ends. By the time filming wrapped, every single one was beaten to hell, but not this one. This one was spared, living a life of luxury as a promotional showpiece. Fast forward to an estate sale in 2014, and a collector stumbles upon this piece of movie history. The engine hadn't been fired up since 1985, but inside, oh man, a certificate from Universal Studios confirming the VIN, a plaque from GM verifying it was a movie promo car, maps showing where scenes were filmed, an original press kit, even an original script. More importantly, this Trans Am had once been titled to none other than the Burt Reynolds Institute for Film and Theater. A full frame-off rotisserie restoration brought it back to showroom glory. Under the hood, a numbers-matching Pontiac-built 400 cubic inch TA 6.6 engine paired with a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic transmission. It had everything: the special edition black and gold paint, removable T-tops, deluxe interior, air conditioning, power windows, power locks, and yes, even the original AM/FM radio with an 8-track player. By the time Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale 2016 rolled around, excitement was through the roof. The hammer dropped at a staggering $550,000, setting a new auction record for a Trans Am. Number 1. The 1966 Batmobile. Imagine rolling up to an auction and seeing the Batmobile gleaming under the lights, waiting to be snatched up by one lucky buyer. At number 1, we have the real deal, the original number 1 Batmobile from the classic 1966 TV series. George Barris, the undisputed king of Hollywood custom cars, transformed a 1955 Lincoln Futura concept into what would become one of the most iconic vehicles in entertainment history. It was full of superhero swagger with its bold black and red design, bubble canopy cockpit, and those unmistakable bat fins that looked like they could slice through Gotham's toughest crime rings. Its gadgets were the most important aspect of the Batmobile. The nose-mounted aluminum cable cutter was Batman's answer to roadblocks and steel doors, slicing through obstacles with precision. The Bat-Ray projector, that little beauty, let the Dark Knight flash his symbol across the city skyline, striking fear into criminals who thought they could sink into the shadows unnoticed. Moreover, security-wise, an anti-theft device, a detectoscope, and a bat-eye switch were added. A police-banned cut-in switch, rumored to be designed by a dropout now working for NASA, gave Batman an exclusive line to the cops. Then there was the automatic tire inflation system, an ahead-of-its-time feature even James Bond would tip his hat to. Let's not forget the bat phone or the emergency bat turn lever, which, with the help of dual 10-foot parachutes, allowed for dramatic 180-degree getaways that had criminals eating dust. At the auction block at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale in 2013, anticipation was through the roof. The hammer dropped at a staggering $4.62 million, setting a record for TV and movie cars. That wraps up our list of legendary TV and film cars that hit the Barrett-Jackson auction. Which one would you take home if money wasn't an issue? Let us know in the comments. If you love iconic rides, crazy auction stories, and all things automotive, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got plenty more coming your way.